Marshals Season 1 Episode 11 Review, pushes Kayce deeper into the darkness. The sense of intentionality that permeates Marshals is one of its best features. In Season 2 of Criminal Record, Peter Capaldi and Cush Jumbo discuss uneasy alliances and devalued truth. Because every detail contributes to a predetermined result, neither the writing nor the acting take any chances. Because everything matters in the end, which is crucial in a world full of repetitive procedures, it is easy to connect with the plot. Kayce and Pete's relationship has been strangely antagonistic and distant since the pilot episode. Kayce has had the upper hand, manipulating Pete into giving him a longer leash than he actually ought to have by exploiting memories of the battle. It has appeared at Kayce's ranch, in the workplace, and during rescues. Their shared background jeopardizes the relationships they formed, making every encounter needlessly strained. I'm so accustomed to procedurals drawing out the mystery until you lose interest that I never imagined the Renaer issue would be resolved this early. But Marshals Season 1 Episode 11, On Thin Ice, didn't hold back and forced them to be honest. By the end of the hour, the two-parter that began in Marshals Season 1 Episode 10 has reversed. To a certain degree, Pete now has the advantage. Kayce's newfound resolve is put to the test by the Neil Lamb predicament. Occasionally, some of the numerous skeletons in the Dutton closet will come to light. Neil is the most recent. But Kayce failed the test, which upset me that I sincerely hoped he would make the right decision and turn Neil over to the police. However, we were given the impression of a guy who would kill to defend the crimes committed by his family and his own involvement in them. Despite Pete's interference, Kayce is practically planning how to solve this issue as cleanly as possible. Although it provides for an intriguing story in the future, this intriguing turn of events still doesn't warrant the effort spent on it. Example, we ought to have discovered Kayce in the same way at the Marshall series premiere if the intention was to claim that he hasn't changed. Looking back, he might have exhibited those Dutton traits early on. However, I transferred my desire onto him following his choice to sell the property in the Yellowstone series finale. I wanted him to develop into a clear-cut hero that people would want to support. But when Pete finds out about the train station, this hour puts him in an even more chaotic situation. This is significant, and the writer's approach to it is both fascinating and disheartening. The train station may be a moral yardstick for Kayce's current and future selves, thus it should have taken more seasons for Pete or anyone else to learn about it. His regular use of that place would have told us everything, as the hour shows he hasn't changed all that much. The best secrets are those that are carried by a single individual, thus bringing Pete into the fold robs the secret of its strength. However, depending on what Pete chooses to do, it also adds another fascinating depth to the entire situation. He has long shielded Garrett, and given what happened to Neil, I have a suspicion that he may do the same for Kayce. How the escaped man ended up frozen dead beneath the ice is unclear in the show. Did Pete intentionally entice Neil there in order to solve another issue for Kayce, or was it self-defense on his part? He has dedicated his life to keeping his Bravo brothers safe. When do the restrictions start to apply? By the end, two persons are aware of the train station, and if the secret was discovered, one person might lose everything. Pete's reaction to Barbie and Belle suggests that he is capable of keeping a secret. So, the question is, how long? Working with Kayce must be difficult without occasionally becoming agitated or even furious. They now have an equal number of suspects whose deaths cannot be explained between the two of them. They will have a solid place to start if they come across another Gifford or if the same works rekindle his attention. Because it keeps on the promises made early in Marshals Season 1, On Thin Ice, is one of the best hours of the show. Given the tone-jarring cuts to Belle and Barbie's case, it might have been more powerful as a bottle episode. Even though this is a continuous plotline that has caused Brock and Rock and the Marshals a lot of grief, Rainwater's return feels like a diversion. Rainwater's politician emerges at this hour, and the cunning, deliberate maneuvering that gave viewers hope that he may win Yellowstone is evident here. Depending on the aim, words are carefully selected, phrases are well constructed, and issues are foreseen. Miles dislikes it since it puts him in danger once more. When he is useful, the tribe adores him. What happens if he declines to take part in the less glamorous aspects? What happens if he doesn't succeed and people turn against him? We'll be left with the furious, self-centered version of him. It doesn't help that his relationship with Pete's daughter has been a continual source of conflict. Check your gut. On Thin Ice is excellent television for 3/4 of its duration. Although shootouts must occur on procedurals, the tale may have been improved by concentrating on Kayce and Pete's arc. I'm excited even though I have no idea what will happen next. As the bitterly cold snow approaches, Calvin and Kayce are up in the mountains at the start of Marshals episode 11. Neil Lamb, their prisoner, is being escorted through the woods, but things don't seem good. Since both of their phones go directly to voicemail, Belle and Andrea also have trouble reaching them. Realizing that the weather has spun him around, Calvin leads the three of them in the incorrect way. They are forced to take cover at the adjacent cabin since Kayce's truck is on the other side of the ridge. Unfortunately, the cabin's roof is broken, making it less than ideal. Along with trying to ignite a fire, the boys collaborate to try to fix it. They even uncuff Lamb to assist, which, to be honest, seems like a really stupid idea. Although there are undoubtedly tensions amongst the lads, they do create a fire and make an effort to avoid arguing too much. Calvin falls into a frozen lake after walking directly onto it while going outdoors to gather kindling. Calvin returns to the cabin, but in a difficult manner. It's touch and go for a while, but Lamb must give up his clothing to keep Calvin warm. In other news, Andrea is adamant about continuing her search for Neil Lamb, who is clearly off with our sons. We find out that Lamb served 7 years in prison for armed robbery in South Dakota before going utterly missing until last year, when he stole a bank and killed 2 security guards. Lamb appears to have been in contact with a man named Charlie Ripley to plan a new scam, and he had $500,000 that was never found. He was incarcerated alongside Ripley, and because he failed to make payments to his child, the Marshals also have power over him. They take him to the Marshals' headquarters, where Ripley says Lamb requested a rifle and warm clothing. After some back and forth, we find out that Neil Lamb also had a conversation with a man named Benson, Don. The man has Neil's back and seems to be a ride-or-die madman. Regretfully, it appears that Ben is going to reverse the situation on the mountainside. Unfortunately, Calvin and Kayce's predicament escalates up at the cabin. Kayce responds to Cal's description of the Dutton family as gangsters on horseback, pointing out that they persevere rather than give up. Cal's decision to leave Roner, one of their men in the field, behind after they were overrun during an operation has always caused anxiety for Kayce. They believed he was dead when they left the mountain, but he was actually struggling for his life. He was eventually killed by the enemy after the gang spotted him on the infrared. Kayce has always placed the responsibility on Calvin, however it seems that Garrett provided information that Roner had passed away. In another scene, Rainwater is visited by Nancy Olmeyer, CEO of Crestmark Mining. He brings Miles in as his smoking gun in an attempt to halt the construction of this mine. Miles explains the significance of Broken Rock, especially how he collaborates with the Marshals to aid his people, with great eloquence. It works and makes it possible for a future negotiation. Neil flees back to the cabin, but Calvin is helpless to stop him. Although he is easily overwhelmed, Kayce supports him. They are walking through the woods when Benson shows up and threatens them with a rifle. However, it doesn't last long when he is shot dead by both Belle and Andrea. Neil Lamb is actually frozen beneath the ice, despite the boys' claims that he is still out there. Regretfully, he is not the only one who dies. Garrett is also pronounced deceased. The review of the episode. This week, Marshals returns and delves more into Kayce and Calvin's past. The majority of this season's drama has been captured by their tensions, and we now know what really started it all. As it happens, there was only one major miscommunication. Throughout the season, Calvin's character in particular has been badly written. He doesn't behave like a leader, even if he is meant to be one. He struggles in his role and lacks an air or sense of power. To be fair, these kinds of anomalies, like utilizing a hay bale for protection against bullets, have plagued much of the season. There's also the dubious manner they handled Lamb up in that cabin. The episodes don't have much depth, and it's obvious that the show was created with broadcast TV in mind. There are a few little glimpses of what may have been scattered among the chapters, but mostly the writing has been subpar at best. Compared to Yellowstone or the superior spin-offs, this is undoubtedly a far cry. As the season draws to a close, it's safe to say that Marshall's overall performance has been somewhat lackluster. The weather has changed. Kayce Dutton would be aware that the bomb cyclone from the most recent Marshals episode has turned into a man-killer. Because Kayce, Pete Calvin, and Neil Lamb, a former Yellowstone ranch hand and escaped federal prisoner, are arrested during Part 2. Their situation deteriorates as they search for shelter in Montana's harsh Madison Range while trudging through snow and ice. However, they are most threatened by the spirits of men who were slaughtered in the past, and not everyone will survive this. Afghanistan, 2015. They send Kayce, Double G, Cal, and Roner, J. Reeves, their fourth musketeer, to another mountainside, where Taliban fighters take control of their observation point. Through Kayce's nightmare, this is an enlarged version of the incident that we witnessed in the first moments of Marshals Episode 1, and boy is it. He wants to advance in the face of withering fire and RPGs falling on their position. Bring the battle to the adversary. However, Cal receives a radio order to retreat, and the boss shows up carrying a wounded Garrett. Roner, what about him? The SEALs must go get their brother. Calvin gives a headshake. Dude, Roner's gone. And the blasts go on. The team is currently divided as well. Cruz and Bell wonder why Cowboy would abandon Garrett's bedside as they drive through the storm in the dark, unable to get in touch with Cal or Kayce. In an effort to locate the bus crash escapee, who is still causing problems for their crew on the mountain, they investigate Lamb's life and contacts at headquarters. While Cal fights with Kayce, Lamb continues to search for a way out or a deal. You are the reason we are in this mess. They discover a hunter's cabin, or what's left of it, which serves as both a haven from the storm and a place where these men, who were once brothers in arms, may finally face their unfiltered emotions from their time at war. Back at the hospital, what did Garrett mean when he said, "Tell Cal I'm sorry"? Pete refuses to respond. While searching for firewood by himself, he quickly tumbles through a concealed patch of ice. Kayce demands Lamb's thermal undershirt to warm Cal as hypothermia sets in, revealing the Khan's own hooked rocking, Y logo. Additionally, Lamb blabs to Cal about the train station in the cabin, which serves as the actual fuel for the fire when Kayce leaves for more tinder. It's his play. Dutton, you're going to have to kill your partner too in order to protect your family. The Marshals' best run to date is what comes next. Cal is furious despite being hypothermic and shivering. Was everything Marshall's employer Gifford and Randall Clegg said true? The Duttons are nothing more than horse-mounted mobsters. However, Kayce betrays his old friend, who conceals his drug addiction and abandoned their comrade to be kidnapped by brutal white nationalists. In contrast to how Cal abandoned Roner, he said of his family, "At least we fight, till the end for each other." Pete warns that the train station revelation might burn both of their badges if they survive the storm and get off the mountain. This clip expresses more emotion than the entire series has thus far. While Luke Grimes, both in the SEAL flashbacks and in the present, maintains his character's shivering state, Logan Marshall Green angrily analyzes all these past ghosts, shared and otherwise. Exposes a greater spectrum of emotions in Kayce than we've likely ever seen as he stands up for the deadliest parts of his family's history. It has great power. Finally, Cal answers Kayce's question honestly. After Garrett informed him that his comrade musketeer had been killed by RPG fire back in Afghanistan, Bravo team withdrew and returned to base, only to learn from thermal drone imagery that Roner had lived, if only momentarily. Cal decided it would be preferable to accept the responsibility as a sort of atonement since Garrett's mental health was ruined by the guilt. Neil Lamb failed to reach the summit. When his trembling, colder than Bud/S hands were unable to hold his service weapon, he rushed Cal in an attempt to flee the divided Marshals. After Bell and Cruz reach the mountain to return their comrades to civilization, Pete claims the fugitive is, in the wind. However, we get a glimpse of the scene where they fought, with an orange jumpsuit belonging to a prisoner buried in shattered ice. For the time being, the Dutton family's secrets won't be revealed. A competent team leader keeps his members safe from both actual dangers and ghosts from the past.